is Sean Krauser. I'm the mayor of Canmore, and it is my pleasure to be your moderator today. We are going to be, that's the wrong one, there we go. Okay, we're going to be going through a set format. There's a few things I'd like to do first though. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge that we're gathered today on Treaty 7 territory. This is the traditional territory of First Nations belonging to the Blackfoot Confederacy, Siksika, Kana, and Ganai, also to the Tsuut'ina First Nation, and to our closest adjacent Indigenous neighbors, the Stoney Nakoda, comprised of the Bearspaw, Chiniki, and Goodstoney. This is also Métis District number 4. And I'd also like to thank those who are sponsoring today's events, and they are the Biosphere. Give them a round of applause. Arts Place. Tourism Canmore Kananaskis. Bow Valley Engage. Bow Valley Chamber of Commerce. And the Downtown Business Association. If you happen to have an empty chair beside you, can you raise your hand? Okay, there's one there, one back there, 2 over there. So look for those hands if you're looking for a place to sit. Okay, and of course we've got some very special people up at the front here. They are special because putting your name forward is no small thing. I've met with each of them. They all seem like very nice people. They're doing this for the right reason. They're wanting to represent the people of this riding, and it's a relative thankless job, but I would like you to, before we even start, give them a round of applause. And going from my far right, your left, down the table, in alphabetical order, we have Vicky Bayford from the People's Party of Canada. We have Michael Fark, Liberal Party of Canada. Avani Soma, New Democratic Party. And William Stevenson, Conservative Party of Canada. What we're going to do today is we are going to go through various sections. First of all, there will be opening statements. Then there are some set questions. Each of the sponsor organizations have the opportunity to ask one question. And for those who are asking that question, the microphone is right here in front of me. That's where you will come to ask your question when I call upon you. After the set questions, as you came in, you will have chosen some topics. And we're going to see how many of those topics we can get through during our additional questions. The set questions have been provided to the candidates in advance. The questions on these topics have not. And then we're going to be into our closing statement. We will be done at 5 o'clock. So if you need to use the facilities, please know that they are over here at this end of the room. And if you need to get a refreshment or water, it's at the back there. Now, I want to say something about, some have asked, oh, you're the mayor, you're doing this moderation. Well, as a mayor of any municipality, we really should be nonpartisan. That's the way that it works best. We work with other levels of government, whoever represents us. We have the same constituents, and we do so gladly, and we do so with great goodwill. And so I look forward to working with one of these individuals, whoever it is. We're going to have a good working relationship because that's the way that things should work. Now, I'm going to talk about something that all of the candidates will have that I haven't seen in the community forum before, but they each have 2 opportunities for a rebuttal. So if after somebody has spoken and you'd like to use your rebuttal, just please raise your hand, get my attention, and let me know you'd like to use your rebuttal. It's just a 30 seconds. You can only do it twice. Of course, you can always rebut something that's said before during your set time in answering a question, but this is if you'd like to do beyond that, maybe there's something you heard you want to set the record straight or you really have to speak to, you get that rebuttal opportunity, 2 of them for each candidate, if you wish to use them. The rules of engagement are quite simple. Let's just keep it civil, all right? I don't expect any problems with the candidates. They'll speak when it's their turn. Please don't speak over others while they're speaking. From the audience, if you hear something you like, feel free to applause. If you hear something you don't like, I don't want to hear any jeers or boos, all right? Just be silent. Let us hear from you when you hear something you like. Other than that, we are good to go. So, we are going to start with our opening statements. We have a timer up front here. The opening statements are to be up to 3 minutes. A yellow card will be raised when you have 30 seconds left. The red card will be raised when your time is done. I'll let you finish your sentence, but then please stop at that point. And so we're going to start with Vicki Bayford from the People's Party of Canada. It is now time for your opening statement.
Good afternoon, everyone, and I love that there's so many people here and so many engaged citizens in the town of Canmore. First, I want to thank all of you for being here and being willing to listen to all of our messages. Again, my name is Vicki Bayford. I was born and raised in Calgary, fifth generation Albertan. And so I have family all across this province from the south end to the north end. And I love my province and I love my home. Today I want to put my name forward to run for the PPC because I believe in the values that they represent. They represent freedom and personal responsibility, and they believe that we have to pull back in many ways on the federal level and actually put the power back into the hands of the people. I believe in self-responsibility and accountability, which is something that I also feel has been lacking in all levels of government. And I believe it's my responsibility as a representative to bring your message forward and be able to give you more of a say over the things that happen in your community. PPC is talking about some very drastic things, and I know that sometimes I get a little bit of pushback on some of the policies that the PPC wants to put forward. We want to put a moratorium on things like mass immigration and get our infrastructure caught up and our housing caught up, and actually look at employing our youth first before we employ people from other countries. We want to make sure that we have a stable economy, that when we do invite people to come and live in our beautiful country, that there is a place for them to actually live and be able to work. We also believe that we need to pull out of a lot of these global organizations such as the UN and the WEF and the WHO, and ensure that policies that are put forward at a federal level not being influenced by unelected representatives that have their own agenda that they want to put forward to the rest of the world. Again, I just wanted to say I'm so thankful to be here, and I'm looking forward to the questions that are going to come out of this community. And I'm just going to ask that if you want a real voice in this constituency, then you need to vote for Vicki Bayford.
Thank you. Now we have Michael Fark from the Liberal Party of Canada.
Thank you, Sean. So yes, my name is Michael Fark, also Calgary born and raised. Been coming to the mountains my whole life. I started off my career as a stonemason and as a home builder. I spent a significant number of years overseas doing emergency and crisis management work with an organization called Doctors Without Borders. I've worked in the provincial government here in Alberta with Justice and Solicitor General. I worked here in Canmore for 5 years as the General Manager of Municipal Infrastructure. And most recently, I have been the Director of Recovery after the wildfire last year that struck Jasper. Thanks to the folks up here tonight, I was the last one to know that I was going to be entering elected politics. I was asked about 4 weeks ago if I would consider running, and I do want to explain to you why I said yes, even though this was not something that I had previously considered. So with my international work, I have exposure to geopolitical context analysis, and there are very real and growing threats and concerns that we as Canadians need to be aware of and position ourselves on. I'm very concerned about the aggressive posturing of our neighbor to the south and what their policies might mean for our country and for our riding. I'm also concerned about things that are happening right here in the riding. The wildfire that occurred last summer in Jasper is a good example of the immediate and real effects of climate change. We have the drought in southern Alberta. There are chronic housing issues all across the riding. These are things that all of the communities have in common, and the lack of ability to find meaningful solutions to address some of these challenges has motivated me to get into politics. More specifically, over the last 8 months, I've been dealing with ministers at the provincial and the federal level, and I've seen what happens when there's too big of a disconnect between those at the decision-making level and those who actually understand what it takes to develop policy, implement policy, and understand what the consequences of that policy will be on the people that we are meaning to represent. And so from my perspective, you either have the opportunity to sit back and continue to allow things unfold, or you can step up and try to do something different. And that is what we're trying to do with this campaign. Over the course of the campaign, we've talked to people all across the riding, and we've heard a number of concerns. There's legitimate cause for anger and frustration amongst many people. Unattainable housing, failure to make meaningful progress on the environment, amongst other things. But there's also much more that unites us and brings us together than that drives us apart. And what we have to do on a going forward basis is to find that common ground, engage with all members of our community in good faith, and see where we can find real and practical solutions, and have people who have the experience to be able to do that work. Thank you very much. I hope we can have your support.
Thank you. Now, just before I introduce the next speaker, I have been advised that there are some people who would desire, if you're able to stand up while you speak, because you can't continue from the back. So I'll leave that to you. Our next opening statement is from Avni Soma from the New Democratic Party.
Hello everyone, thanks for coming out. Can you hear me?
Yes.
So many faces that I've known for so many years, so it even makes me more nervous to be up here to represent well. As I look around the room, I am reminded of something that Mish Lamb said at a Canmore Pride event last summer. They said, look around and take note of who is missing in the room. For me, what I see, we're missing our service workers and many small business owners who are the backbone of our economy here in Canmore. And they need true representation. And the NDP has always brought their voices to the table. I grew up in Calgary, and when I came to Canmore 15 years ago, I saw the need for change, particularly in food systems. So I got involved, as many of you know, with building the community garden that's at the hospital and the various gardens around town with the schools through school food literacy. At the same time, I co-founded FarmBox, a business that many of you have bought food from us at the market or talked to me at the market, and I've delivered food to your homes. And it was a business where we built relationships with farmers, small-scale farmers in BC and Alberta, and brought those relationships and that food to you here. We grew that business from 0 to 1.2 million in sales in 6 years. And we were proud to have diverted those food dollars from large-scale grocery stores. We built a model that proved you can pay farmers fairly, treat employees well, and respect the environment, all the while running a sustainable business. From that experience, I saw the need for change at a policy level. Moving from the private sector to the public sector, I was selected as the only Alberta representative on the Canadian Food Policy Advisory Council, where we advise the Minister of Agriculture on food and agricultural policy. At the same time, I was a member of the Coalition of Healthy School Food, and we helped shape the national school food policy that came out last year. And on a grassroots level, I started a hot lunch program at my kids' school here in town. Et on était sur un reportage avec Radio-Canada. Est-ce qu'on a les francophones ici? Oui, merci. On a choisi l'école francophonie. From that experience, I saw the need for change at a policy level. I lost my train of thought. From my policy work,
Yep.
I'll get it in on the next one.
Thank you very much. And now we'll have the opening statement from William Stevenson, Conservative Party of Canada.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. So glad to see so many people out on this gorgeous day that we have on a holiday. A lot of times it's family time, but you're all out here engaged, so it's very good that you're out to listen to all of us. I want to thank my fellow candidates for getting out. I believe this is number 9 for us. So we've been out to a lot of different forums around the constituency. So my name is William Stevenson. I am the Conservative candidate. I earned the nomination back in June last year, and since then I have been getting around to the different areas of our riding, meeting not just the actual constituents, but I've met with 14 different councils between the municipalities and the towns to get a pulse on what's going on in our riding. But a bit about myself. I am a husband, married 25 years. I have 2 grown daughters who are now off in their own career. I got a registered nurse as well as one in communications. So my family's in the right position for us to be able, for me to go back and forth to Ottawa to represent you and your concerns in Ottawa. I reside on a farm more on the eastern side, just east of Cremona. My family's actually had ties to this riding. My great-grandfather homesteaded just east of Crossfield in the 1880s, and so my family's been connected to this new riding as it's configured for 120 years. Myself, I went to U of C. I got a political science degree, and that's where I got interested in politics. But like many arts degrees, that's good for the wall, but it's not good for the wallet. So I got a commerce degree afterwards and went into accounting. Right after university, I started a trucking company with my father in Calgary, while I moved to the family farm and raised cattle. But during that time, early on in the trucking industry, I earned my accounting designation and I started in public practice in 2000. So for the last 25 years, I've been doing individual personal taxes and corporate taxes for thousands of people. Last year alone, I did over almost 1,100 tax returns. So a lot of my focus is going to be on business and and the tax and how every piece of legislation that the government brings out affects us on an individual basis. So I hope that we'll get lots of questions to come. So I hope you'll be able to get everything you need to make a good informed decision. And I hope you'll vote for William Stevenson, Conservative Party. Thank you.
Thank you. We're going to be moving to the next section then, which is our set questions from the sponsoring organizations. As I explain this, I would love for Dr. Hugh Notman to make his way to the microphone here, because you will ask the first question on behalf of the biosphere. So this section, it's a question that has been predetermined by the sponsoring organization. They were provided to the candidates on Wednesday, and for the answers here, they're going to be up to 2 minutes. But once again, 30 seconds left will be a yellow card, and when your time is up, it will be a red card. And I'm going to be altering the order as we go with each question. So the opening statement started with Vicky, and so now I'm going to turn to Mike to ask or to answer the question first, and then we'll go along the table in order. So our first question is from the biosphere, and this is Dr. Hugh Nauman. The microphone is yours.
Thank you. Just so everyone's aware, the Biosphere Institute is a community-based, not-for-profit organization with the mission to raise awareness about climate efficiency in the Bow Valley, human-wildlife coexistence, that's our Wild Smart program, and youth environmental leadership. So our question is very straightforward and simple, and that is, what specific policies will you support to reduce Canadians' greenhouse gas emissions?
So first, I think it's important that we acknowledge that climate change, that climate change is very real, and it is a clear and present threat. It is not some far-off theoretical. In terms of specific policies, I am in favor of retaining the carbon tax on the large emitters as a proven, effective way of incentivizing industry to invest in new technologies to reduce our carbon footprint. I support the recent national call by municipal governments and mayors across this country to invest in a green national energy grid and the development of additional renewable energy technologies. And I'm strongly in favor of some of the programs that are already in place, including the resiliency grants that provide interest-free loans or granting to build resiliency. So this can be things like heat pumps, insulation upgrades to homes. It can also be looking at things like fire smarting, better and fire-resistant materials. When we look at the carbon threat and what that represents for our communities, we have to be looking at both the adaptation, but also the resilience side of things. And in that side in particular, there is a need for a better investment in disaster response and disaster preparedness. As we've seen in Jasper, these events are going to happen more frequently, and we need to have the resources mobilized to deal with them. Thank you.
Anthony, you have 2 minutes.
Okay. So I chose food because I was passionate about climate change 20 years ago. And that was my entry into choosing food and agriculture. Through my voice on the Canadian Food Policy Advisory Council, we helped shape the Sustainable Agriculture Strategy. And in that strategy, one of the key components from 2023 to 2028 was to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 3 to 5 megatons over that time period. And how does that work? There are different organizations and different groups that are working directly with farmers. Farmers are on the front line of climate emergency daily. They have to go out onto their fields every day and mitigate the risk. They have to decide which inputs they are going to use, which inputs they cannot use, which ones can they afford to use, all the while dealing with volatile markets, drought conditions, and our changing climate. The Rural Roots, organizations like Rural Roots to Climate Solutions work with farmers to help change behaviors around rotational grazing, crop diversity, and soil health, various soil health initiatives. So I would continue to support organizations through federal policy that would help farmers continue to mitigate their risk.
I believe the question was, how are we going to support the reduction of Canadian greenhouse gas emissions? When we look at, from the Conservative Party, we've looked at taking the perspective that emissions is going to be a global issue that we have to deal with. And to deal with that, part of our strategy is to be focusing on using technology and to spread Canadian technology around the world to reduce emissions in other places that will actually have a bigger impact than restricting just Canadian emissions. So part of that is exporting our technology to South Asia and China to help with their own power production. The other part of that too is to actually get our LNG to be sold to those markets so that they get off of coal and actually be using much better technology and products. And then we can actually benefit from that rather than having our economy being taxed with any sort of carbon tax. It's been proven that there's a huge difference. We can actually save almost 50% of the emissions when a lot of the power plants are changed from actually coal to LNG. So providing that is actually probably one of the best things that we can do as a global thing for our Canadian emissions as well.
And just before we go to Vicki, I would like to let the Arts Place representative Meredith Bratland know that you will be asking your question after this response. So Vicki, 2 minutes.
So the PPC stance, and even my personal stance on this, is that CO2 is our friend, and that the climate has been changing. I'm not denying climate change. Climate change has been happening since the beginning of time. We have changed climates. Edmonton used to be a tropical rainforest millions of years ago. So this is going to be a continual cycle. We do not have the proper scientific methods to prove exactly what's going to happen to the earth and as it's going to happen. We do have methods that can help us mitigate. We have lots of technology that can help us mitigate the risk from climate change. But to tax and make no difference and just raise the cost of living for our youth and for our homes and for our future does not make sense. We do not believe there should be any carbon tax on anything because we do not feel it's fixing the problem. If we're going to spend money and we're going to put money towards things, then we do need to put it more towards the mitigation of natural disasters. The wildfire in Jasper, I read the government kind of post-mortem report afterwards, and the reason that fire was so hot, and this is based on government reports, was that the suppression methods we were using actually possibly caused that fire to burn hotter, and that's why it was able to jump the fire barriers and things like that. So we just have to look at our practices on what we're doing to mitigate, and I do not believe that a carbon tax is going to fix our environment, lower our GHG, or make Canada a healthier place to be.
All right, now I'll call upon. Oh, sorry, Mike.
I'd like to exercise one of my 2 rebuttals, please.
Please do. You have 30 seconds to do so.
So again, I think that the science behind climate is unequivocal. This is a question more for William and the Conservative Party. As I understand it, you're proposing no real domestic initiatives to reduce Canadians' carbon consumption, and I wonder how you expect the narrative of exporting technology and expecting other countries to reduce theirs. How are we credible when we're not leading by example? And how do you expect those countries to adopt our technologies and use our products if we're not seen to be part of the solution around carbon and doing things domestically?
William will have an opportunity to respond to that. When the rebuttals were originally envisioned, you would have 30 seconds to make a statement as opposed to ask a question. But you have asked a question, so I will give William the opportunity. And this is a free, this does not use up a rebuttal, it is a free response for 30 seconds.
Thanks for that clarification. I wasn't sure on that. So one of the things that Alberta specifically and the Conservatives have championed is the carbon capture technology that has actually happened in Alberta. And that is one thing that we can show around the world, that we are leading in that technology and being able to address our own carbon sequestration. So that's one of the biggest things that we can show that we are doing here in Canada, and we can show the technology around the world to actually do better on that.
Okay, we're moving to our next question. It's from Arts Place, and this is Meredith Bratland, the microphone is yours, and we're going to be starting with Avni in the response.
Thank you, candidates. As you mentioned, I'm
You can talk right
Meredith Bratland.
You can talk right into the mic.
Thank you. Sorry, I was so close. Good afternoon. Thank you for your time today. I'm Meredith Bratland, and I'm here as a board member of Arts Place. The arts and culture and heritage sectors in Canada are fundamental components of our country's economic and social life. Canadians believe that arts and culture enhance Canada's economy and quality of life and play a crucial role in educating children and fostering cultural awareness. And we see this in abundance in Arts Place. My question is, what is your party's position on federal spending towards arts, culture, and heritage in general? Thank you.
For myself, arts and culture are integral to life. I speak a lot about food. Food culture is a big part of life. And the NDP party believes in people, and they will always fight for people, and that arts are a part of that. I can tell you stories about growing up in Calgary, where I had the opportunity to learn various instruments, be able to practice my culture. That my parents are immigrants from India, so we were able to keep our culture, and what that support network and what that culture has done and provided me in growing up in a culture that I'm not the dominant culture was wonderful. That was the only way that I was able to have a great support network. And here in Arts Place, thank you to everyone who got that going. Like we use Art Place almost every weekend for the kids for all kinds of various things. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Originally, when we got the questions here the other day, I actually didn't know a whole lot about the Arts Coalition, and I had to look up what they were doing. The question that we had there was slightly different in regards to what was here, and it requested what our position would be on spending with regards to the arts. I'm not about to commit to anything on regards to how much more we're going to be spending with regards to that. At this point, with a $60 billion deficit, we're going to have to make some hard choices in going forward. But to say whether or not we have enough or spending on that, it's hard to say, because I actually don't have a detailed explanation as to where they're spending their money on everything. So that part of it, I wasn't ready to say that we're going to spend more money on it at this point. But the arts are definitely a part of what we are as a society, and it will be definitely a consideration as to what the government can support.
Thank you.
So yeah, I think when it comes to arts programs, things like that, I think those are a lot of times really local things. Now, should the federal government support initiatives that go for that? I believe so. I think for me, music's been a big part of my life. I love art. I go to museums regularly, and I think those are things that need to be preserved. But I also believe that there's jurisdiction that we have to look at, and we have to look at the levels of government, and that should be helping support those things, and how important it is to the community and the people that live there. Like William said, we are in a big deficit right now, and it's time for Canada as a whole to start kind of like pulling in the belt buckle. We can't just keep printing money. Our inflation is going to go out off the charts here soon. Our cost of living, as most of us, especially probably our younger people, feel it a lot more than I do. Their cost of living's up off the charts, and so I think we have to be really thoughtful about actual public funding of these programs. But I know that there's community support for many programs, and I do believe in philanthropy. I do believe that when communities come together to support something like saving a museum or saving a heritage site or getting local music into the scene again, I know that it happens because I've seen it So anyway, that's I do support art, I love music, and I think we just have to come together in our separate communities to make sure that those things stay alive and well.
Now, before our last answer to this question, I'd like to let Rachel Ludwig know that Tourism Canmore Kananaskis is next. Mike, you have 2 minutes on the arts question.
There's a very clear economic argument to be made for investment in the arts. Arts and culture returns more to the economy than it costs the government. That's very clear. Beyond that, government is also not intended to be a business. Government is a service, and it's a service that provides what we as Canadians value. Furthermore, more than 80%, for example, of media in Canada is actually foreign owned and represents a very clear risk to what arts and culture our communities consume. The Liberal government is committed to supporting and reinforcing the CDC as a critical It is committed to increasing funding to the Canadian Council for the Arts, to Telefilm Canada, and to National Film Board. These types of cultural programs are more than just about entertainment. They speak to who we are, they are what bring us together, and they are what we will rely on when we face some of the concerns that we are experiencing, for example, from our neighbors to the south. So from my perspective, moving towards the 1% target is a sound financial investment, but it is also a fundamental Canadian value.
Candidates, we now have a question from Tourism Canmore Kananaskis, and here to ask the question is the Executive Director, Rachel Ludwig.
Hello candidates, I'm here to represent Tourism Canmore Kananaskis. We are the destination management organization for Canmore and Kananaskis. We are measuring our success on a triple bottom line approach to tourism, looking at people, profit, and the planet. And we know that tourism is a big export industry for Canada and the Bow Valley. Tourism provides $51 billion in GDP to the Canadian economy annually. Despite our successes, there's a lot of challenges, and I believe we will probably talk about the challenges later. My question to you is, if you are elected, how will you ensure that the government will make tourism a priority? Thank you.
Thank you, and the first to go is William.
Thank you for the question. A couple of weeks ago, I was invited a month or so ago, but a couple of weeks ago I was out at the Stony Casino where there was actually a full day of discussion about what can be done and what's coming down the pipe and how we can affect it. So I've learned quite a bit about that, and I do believe, although it won't be up to my decision, but I do believe that the tourism should actually have its own portfolio and its own minister, and that will make a big difference to the focus. Part of the issue, I think, is some of the tourism has been lumped in when you have parks and environment. They have some competing concerns, and with those competitions, parks and the environment has taken far more of a concentration over the last several years, and the tourism has fallen off. So we need to definitely be looking at the concerns of the experiences for the individuals within those areas. But the Conservative government's going to have a bunch of different things that we're looking at, specifically how do we get those tourism industries to have staff. So we gotta have the housing. How do we have the housing? We gotta have the tradespeople that actually can do it, and it's all gotta be affordable and in the area that we've got. So we're gonna be concentrating on getting those affordable housing that the workers that are to support those industries will actually be there. Part of our strains on some of those has been also the immigration policy and driving up some of those housing costs. So we were actually looking at changing some of our immigration so that we can have, there's a lot of things that are tied in together, and part of that is definitely having the affordability part of that. Thanks.
Thank you.
So on top of getting our infrastructure caught up and making sure that we can sustain our employees, the people that live in the communities. When it comes to tourism, that is a huge actually part of our GDP actually here in Alberta. It is, the industry here is amazing. I mean, I've enjoyed it for my entire life, been able to come out to the parks. But I think, right now too, it's also coming down to affordability. How do we make sure that our local communities across this province can continue to come and afford to, come and stay here? How do we make sure that the word's getting out that this is still one of the best places in the world to come and visit and getting the attention there? So I think from the federal side and supporting tourism and business, I think a big part of it is that we need to make sure that we're getting the proper message out. And again, we need the infrastructure to ensure that we have the employees. Sorry, I'm saying I'm a lot. There's also, a big thing to say about building our small business. I think 75% of this business was originally built on small and medium-sized businesses, farms, and the people that, get dirty. And we really have to create an environment again where our businesses can actually be competitive. The cost of living, and not just the cost of living, but the cost to run a business now has become so expensive. We have to get rid of a lot of the barriers that allow people to start businesses and actually be competitive in their business. So hopefully if we can make government smaller and actually start giving tax breaks that people deserve, people can actually run a successful business.
So I'll start by saying where I don't agree is that Parks is guilty of moving too far towards the environmental consideration and not enough on visitor. If anything, I think the risk is going to be the other way around. Where I will agree is that there needs to be a critical focus on infrastructure that will make the industry successful. Again, both provincial and federal parks have been chronically underfunded in terms of their needs for infrastructure maintenance, let alone developing new infrastructure, so that does have to be a priority. However, as I understood the question, it was very much, what would I do in order to ensure that tourism was well represented? So, as somebody who spent almost 25 years working at various levels of government, I understand the internal systems of government and how they work. I've engaged extensively in government advocacy and understand that what you have to do is to start with is to engage with industry, across industry, to understand their concerns. And there, what I'm seeing in industry is a consensus. So I was at that same TIA conference that William was at, and the industry itself is recognizing a need for a balance between environment and business, and that the most critical part of infrastructure for tourism is a healthy environment, because that is what brings people to the mountains. I think it is a responsibility of government to rely on evidence-based decision-making, to engage directly with our partners to understand what policies actually will move the needle in one direction or another. And it requires somebody who's willing to sit down, again, with all the partners in good faith and work to find common solutions. Thank you.
All right, you'll use up one of your rebuttals, and we'll go to Abney for the last. Okay. All right, so Abney, you'll have your 2 minutes, and I just want to give a heads up to Colleen Campbell from Bow Valley Engage. Your question will be next.
So tourism is a great question. As I've traveled this riding over the last 7 months, I have heard from all parts of this riding that tourism is increasing. I spoke to someone in Hinton who wanted to start a small business to rent out ATVs to get people out into the backcountry. I've spoken with an established business owner in Banff who told me that we need to have more discussions with parks around permitting and how much they're charging small businesses to run in the parks. So tourism is very, very important. And I feel that the role of an MP and the federal government is to bring all these voices to the table, whether it's starting with the small business owners, the small business organizations, because they're the foundation of our economy and of this tourist economy, and have them all at the same table discussing what needs to happen to allow them to continue to thrive, including looking at the temporary foreign workers program. I just spoke to a lady earlier. NDP has been advocating for open work permits, understanding that that is the idea for the open work permits for foreign workers is to have some kind of regulation for bad faith actors. So we have to understand that the federal government's role is to put in regulation in place to mitigate bad faith actors, which we have in all of our societies.
Okay, you have a 30-second rebuttal.
Not so much a rebuttal as an extra statement because I ran out of time. One of the things that we also need to look at is Destination Canada as a function has changed over the years, and I think that we've gotten away from promoting Canada outside. Over the last decade, there's been a lot of shaming of where Canada has been. I think we have the best country in the world, and we need to be back to promoting it as the best country in the world and inviting those people to get here. And part of that getting here,
Thank you. I'd like to now ask Colleen Campbell from Bow Valley Engage to come ask your question. Oh. Okay, so it's not Colleen anymore.
I showed up, so I can dance.
Lisa?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, hi, I'm Lisa Downing from Bow Valley Engage. We're a local non-profit group that's here for Canmore people, for sustainable development for both our community and our wildlife. So our question to you. Hello. How's that? Better. Okay, yeah, I can hear myself. Hold on. Apologies, can you hear me now? Okay, apologies for reading off my phone, but I want to make sure I get this right. So the long-term health of Banff National Park's largest carnivore populations is dependent upon effective wildlife corridors that connect the park to other large areas of habitat and protected lands. Do you want me to repeat that part? Okay. The long-term health of Banff National Park's large carnivore populations is dependent upon effective wildlife corridors that connect the park to other large areas of habitat and protected lands. Yet Parks, and specifically Kananaskis country, yet Parks Canada's voice has been absent in conversations and efforts to preserve the only remaining functional corridor that we have left that allows wildlife to move around the south side of Canmore to access that important habitat in Kananaskis country. This is a critically important wildlife corridor. We only have one chance to get it right. If elected, would you support Parks Canada getting more substantially involved in efforts to preserve this critical wildlife corridor, as well as engage in any future and provincial municipal land use process that might similarly negatively affect Banff's wildlife? That's a mouthful, sorry about that. Did that make sense to you all?
Great, and Vicki, go ahead.
So I did try to educate myself a bit on this issue. I did a lot of reading and went to our Canada website. So it looks like in 2022 there was some discussion about this, about bringing all the stakeholders that were involved in trying to make sure that these corridors stay open and are maintained appropriately. And I guess part of the thing that I couldn't understand or couldn't find information on was at what point and what conversations have happened already between parks and, Kananaskis, the provincial government, the municipal governments around this issue. I obviously 100% support protecting our wildlife. I think it's we can't be killing off our wildlife. I love animals, I love nature, and we need to preserve that as best as we can. And I know that there are protected areas, but yeah, as an MP, I would definitely support making sure that those conversations happen, making sure that we delineate who's taking care of what, where the money's coming from, and try to make sure like all the appropriate people are at the table to make those decisions. But yeah, from the research I found, I couldn't really quite understand exactly where we're at since 2022, since this became at least a government conversation. So that's the best I can answer it.
I was the municipal government or Canmore government representative on the Bow Valley Human Wildlife Coexistence Report that we published a number of years ago, where we brought the federal government, Parks Canada, municipal or provincial government, Alberta Parks, and the two Bow Valley municipalities together to try to tackle exactly this issue. It was a very productive set of discussions. We came up with some very meaningful recommendations. And I remember saying at the time that if all we did was write a report with recommendations and there was no follow-up, then the exercise would not have been successful. And what I have seen is that there has been a lack of commitment from the higher orders of government, provincial and federal, to actually follow up and meaningfully implement what were already substantive recommendations made at that time. One of the challenges we have is that in the current environment, there are jurisdictional issues. So anything that is outside of the national park falls under provincial jurisdiction. And you may have noticed that the provincial and federal government have not been getting along very well in recent years. One of the things that I would do practically to address this is, if elected, I would advocate to actually return Parks Canada back to the environment portfolio where I believe it rightly belongs. Because although the parks have a boundary, the jurisdiction of what they are responsible for conserving and stewarding do not end at the park's boundary. And the experts who work for Parks Canada are best positioned and are the people that should be having the ability to talk to other aspects of government in order to ensure that we are getting that expert knowledge and that a cumulative and holistic understanding of the implications are taken into consideration. Thank you.
Yes, I do feel that parks should be involved in these discussions. Some of you may remember that I spoke up at the TSMB ASP hearings, and I stand strongly in support of our wildlife corridors. One of the issues when I was on the Canadian Food Policy Advisory Council that came up was that various federal departments work in silos. So you don't see food working that closely with family services or the folks that were advocating for universal basic income. All of these things need to work together. So one thing that I would do, if elected, is bring together different departments to work more closely together and to listen to each other. As Mr. Fark pointed out, we don't have a great relationship, Alberta doesn't have a great relationship with Ottawa, and something that I've been advocating for when I'm knocking on doors is we need to see all levels of government working together. The number of doors I've knocked where I've seen one person who votes NDP and one person who votes Conservative, these people are living together, they're raising kids together, they eat together, and they make a life together. And we are not seeing that same level of working together in government, and that's what I would be working hard for.
Just before William provides his answer, I would like to let Peter Mejia from the Bow Valley Chamber of Commerce know that your question is next. William.
Thank you for the question. I've been very active. I told you I live on a farm. Well, I have horses, and I've spent a number of, I don't know how many days, a lot of days in between the bottom of Canandaigua section, further than that, all the way to Norday. And I've spent a ton of time in the fall out there, and I would say that the eastern slopes, the grizzlies have actually been very, there's been quite a resurgence. I don't know, you may remember or not, but last fall in September there's an interaction with a bow hunter that was attacked by a grizzly by Madden. It's actually pretty close to where we live. And Fish and Wildlife at the time had been doing a lot of checking out all the farmers and everybody, trying to keep track or figure out where that sow and her 3 cubs were. And they actually found out that there was 3 sows, all with 3 cubs, within 25 miles there. So, but they've moved significantly out of their normal range. And so So I think a good portion of the issue is what that range is becoming. So we have to deal with that. Now, the question partly was, will parks be, do we support the parks being involved in it? There needs to be cooperation. We've all said there needs to be cooperation between all the multiple levels of government. And we have been lacking in that. And the implementation is the devil in the details of how we actually get through that. So I think, yes, we do need the parks do need to be talking with municipalities that are beside it, but we also need to deal with the other levels of government all together at the same time. And that's going to be the hard part. And as your MP, I would try to be involved in facilitating those conversations so that we do actually all work together.
I now call upon Bow Valley Chamber of Commerce, Peter Mejia, to ask your question, and Mike will be the first to answer and has 2 minutes.
Thank you very much. I am Peter Mejia, and I'm a realtor with Century 21 Nordic Realty right here in Canmore, and also the host of YouTube channel Alberta Mountain Living. But today I'm here speaking on behalf of the Bow Valley Chamber of Commerce, and the question is, rising housing. Thank you so much. Much better than this. Rising housing costs and overall affordability challenges are making it difficult for workers to live in the Bow Valley, directly impacting the ability of local businesses to hire and retain staff. What federal actions would you support to improve housing access and reduce cost of living pressures in the Bow Valley?
I'll steal the thunder of some of the other candidates by first of all acknowledging that there is work to be done on the regulatory side of things, streamlining processes and simplifying what people need to go through in order to be able to develop, whether it's single family or multifamily developments, and including purpose-built rental. Here I think the Liberal Party of Canada is very clearly leading the way. The Carney government has made several announcements specifically around housing, including for the fact that the federal government will be directly involved in the provision of housing for the first time since the Second World War. They've announced $25 billion in debt financing to be available for industry in order to move forward housing initiatives, a further billion in equity financing. There will be specific focus on developing the modular construction industry, as that allows for both a faster and more carbon efficient construction methodology that can expedite housing. There's a focus on using Canadian materials, especially in light of the tariffs and the trade war that we are currently in. There's a focus on using Canadian materials, Canadian timber, in order to facilitate the construction of those houses. And there is a commitment to actually provide funding to municipalities in order to ensure that they have the infrastructure that they need to be in place in order to support that housing to be built. At the end of the day, we do have a supply failure and a demand failure. The demand has exceeded the supply for a very long time, but also, for example, in Alberta, there's no inclusionary zoning. So there's no tools for municipalities to incentivize industry in order to build the types of housing that we require. The more affordable housing, and I want to say housing on the entire spectrum, from entry level all the way through to seniors who are looking to age in place in their communities.
Reiterate some of the things that Michael has said, but here locally, I know we are losing families, young folks who have young families and young folks who have no prospects of buying a home here. So we're watching closely with the upcoming court challenge with the livability tax program, because I understand that this would raise the funds needed for affordable housing here in Canmore. More importantly, it would incentivize builders away from luxury detached dwellings and focus on home builds that are targeted at people who are actually living here. So from a federal level, our focus has to be on building more non-market housing. Success, this is another way of looking at it, success can be measured by the ratio between building non-market housing. When you build enough non-market, it begins to compete with the market units, and that drives down the rents. Canmore has the land in Palliser. but we need the funding aggressively to increase the supply, and strongly believe that the federal government has a major role to play here.
So we've said before, we've had 9 of these. Housing is universal across this riding as a problem, and what we're going to do. And Mr. Fark is, as he said, is taking some of the thunder. Yes, we have all universally said we have to improve on the problems that we have with red tape, the construction times that it take, or the times to get some permits. The Conservatives want to actually get that reduced and to incentivize municipalities to actually have better, clear construction or clear permitting processes, and that to help facilitate more production of housing. We, as Conservatives, have not been in favor of having governments build housing. Usually when governments get involved in building anything, the costs always go up, and there's a lot of problems with the implementation of that. So the Conservatives have also thought that the role of government should be making it conducive to let builders make the actual construction of the homes, and that we need to make it so that they can actually do that. Part of that has been the cost of the carbon tax, driving up a lot of the costs related to anything related to construction. So we need to be addressing those. But there is a role for the government to actually look at what they could do for some of the co-op housing that they have in certain areas that might actually help with the regulations to keep some of the affordable housing as well. So, thank you.
Now, just before Vicki provides her response, I'd like to let Grady McMahon of the Downtown Canmore Business Association know that your question is next. Vicki.
So yeah, there's certain things that sometimes we all agree on every now and then. So yeah, one of the things is obviously we need to actually get rid of a lot of this red tape, but also one of the things that I don't think anyone's really addressed in this conversation so far is the feel of the communities when we're changing land use bylaws. I mean, because there are certain communities that don't want low-income housing, and that's just a reality. You know, I mean, we do need more housing. We need to be able to have entry-level housing at every level, but there's certain communities that just don't have a lot. And so it's up to that community, and again, this is out of federal jurisdiction, it's up to that community as a whole to decide what kind of housing you want in your area, because obviously you're going to attract a whole different demographic. And is that are you okay with changing the demographic in your community to support entry-level housing, to support low-income housing? And this is not, to marginalize, to dismiss the marginalized community, but that's a reality, and a lot of communities fight back on that. So we have to decide as a community, at a municipal level, at a provincial level, what do you guys want to see for improvements in your town? And are there things that you're willing to get away from in your community and change the demographic in your town, right? So these are things that you guys have to think about as citizens and bring to your municipal and provincial government. As far as the federal things, I think at a federal level, like my responsibility would be to ensure that you have an environment across this riding to build houses and get them done efficiently and create a market to help that private home builders to be able to make money and people will be able to buy affordable housing at the same time.
Abby, you would like to use one of your rebuttal times.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that, Vicki, that's a great point. I am an example of someone in this community who stood up for affordable housing. I live in Larch, and I remember when, I don't know how many of you remember, when there was discussions going on around the town to develop Hawks Bend, which is just beside us. And I was very much for that development because it was affordable housing. And over the years, I am so grateful for that affordable development because it has brought in young families that my kids now play with, skating rink. Thank you.
All right, now the Downtown Canmore Business Association has their question, and here is their Executive Director, Grady McMahon. Oh, I'm sorry. You would like to also use your second rebuttal time? Okay. Sorry about that, Grady.
So I'm going to use my second rebuttal time to just make a statement. So Hawke's Bend is a great example. I was on the CCHC board at the time when we developed that project and implemented it. I was involved in several other of the affordable housing initiatives that have brought actual units to Canmore. And I guess the point I want to make is this is a job, and this is a job interview that we're going through. And if you're thinking about who you are planning to elect, you should be looking at the qualifications and whether the people have the actual experience and have done the work that they can respond to those things in a meaningful way.
Thank you for your patience, Grady. You now have the mic.
All right, so I represent Downtown Canmore Business Association. Obviously, small businesses key to downtown. So our question is, as cost of living and doing business in Canmore continues to rise, what is your plan to support long-term sustainability of locally owned businesses, especially off-peak season time?
And the first is Abney. Yes.
This kind of relates into the housing question because we have 30% of the homes here are empty most of the year, and that is kind of a direct contributor to your question because it's hard for small business to be able to find staff because don't have a place to live. So one solution is looking at housing, and that will increase participation into our economy year-round. The federal government should be working to reduce interprovincial trade barriers so we can increase tourism, we can have more services, work with, and small businesses. Like I know when I ran Farm Box, we had an issue where we had bought a 5-ton truck and we wanted to bring BC produce into Alberta. So this is produce that you can't grow in Alberta, so we needed to transport it. And we had to go through many different layers of permitting to get that truck to come into Alberta. So things that we can look at to support businesses and keep our economy going year-round is to look at interprovincial trade barriers with all of our provinces. And elbows up, Canada.
So the question's specific to the downtown businesses in Canmore, but the main policies of the Conservative Party have tried to address businesses across the country. And some of those are dealing with the costs. Number one, your carbon tax, how that's going to affect the businesses and their costs for utilities and getting products to them if they have and that sort of thing. But we've also got a few other things to incentivize municipalities to help benefit the business associations to help with what they're going to do to create an environment that they can actually thrive in. One of the things that I've actually, as somebody that is a small business guy, somebody that's dealt with tax, looking at the small businesses, there's a few things that we can do to help the actual individual companies. One of those is looking at stopping the escalators on payroll taxes, but actually something that hasn't changed, and if you've been doing your taxes, look at $3,500 is where you have to start paying CPP. That has not changed in about as long as I've been doing business for 26 years. If they actually increase that to $10,000, they could change it so that they didn't have to be charging CPP on the people that are the lower income. They could actually have more people get out to work, so they could have better staffing issues on that. And then the other part of it is increasing it so that seniors can have $34,000 before they get taxed, so you can have somebody that's semi-retired could actually work part-time as well. So that could both help on the employment part of it for small business.
So yeah, the PPC definitely believes in small business. We believe that that's the backbone. Small, medium business is the backbone of our country. We don't believe in corporate welfare. And we think that a lot of times this corporate welfare actually puts our small and medium-sized businesses at a disadvantage, being able to compete with the bigger companies. So we want to reduce the size of government dramatically. We want to pull back and make sure that if we are funding something, that there is a return on investment, whether that's social or whether that's that it's a fiscal, like, or if we're getting a return on our investment monetarily. We want there to be markers that if the government's just giving you money, that you have to prove that you're going to do what you said you were going to do with that money, and there has to be checks and balances in place to ensure that it's a program that needs to continue to be funded. Now we want to go through and do a review and cut a lot of bureaucracy, because we feel like that's what's put us at a disadvantage. And once we can actually balance this budget, we can actually give tax breaks across this country and still stay within our budget. We just have to learn to, look after the things. Federal government has jurisdiction laid out in our Constitution. The provinces have jurisdiction laid out in our Constitution. And I think what's happened is those lines have been blurred so badly over the last 20 years that we have to actually get back to federal government looking after what the federal government's supposed to look after, provincial and municipal look after their jurisdiction, and then cooperate where there are lines that need to be blurred. But I mean, to make a better environment for small business, we do have to be able to reduce taxes and make the cost of living lower for everybody, and make sure that they can stay competitive in a world of sometimes big business.
So there are two sides of the equation for small businesses. The one side is the supports that they need in order to be able to run and manage their business, and the other side is the supports they need in order to ensure that there's actually a market demand for the products that they have. On the support side of things, there needs to be better and easier access to year-round financing. One of the interesting things that I took away from the TIA conference from a couple of weeks ago was about employee retention and how we create programs that allow people to see a pathway for themselves through our dominant industries like tourism, and then provide them the supports that they need, the training, the access to capital, to allow them to progress through that system so they remain long-term members of our community. So I'd like to see further investment in that. On the other side of things, we keep coming back to this topic of infrastructure. So infrastructure includes everything from the offering. It includes the investment we need in parks to ensure that there are amenities that continue to bring people here. It's the investment in infrastructure we need for our municipalities so they can provide public washrooms and water and wastewater facilities and all the other things that they need in order to ensure that when people come here, they have a positive visitor experience as the dominant industry. So we need to increase the support on the infrastructure and the investment side of things. And to be clear, some of the other candidates here are seeing the way forward to be one around tax and tax reduction, and that as the solution to all of our problems. And I have a different perspective, and that perspective is that the solution to our problems requires investment in the things that we value and the things that will actually allow us to prosper. Thank you.
Okay, we've come to the end of our set questions. And before moving to the next section, if I was sitting out there in the audience, it's right about now that my butt would be getting sore. So for the next 20 or 30 seconds, if you're able and would like to stand up, stretch a little bit. All right, let's get going again. All right, if everyone can take their seats, please. All right, the next section All right, if I could get everybody's attention, please, grab your seat. Thank you. Our next section are questions on topics chosen by the audience as they walked in. We have a number of topics listed, and we're going to ask questions on the ones that were most popular. And this section questions have not been provided to the candidates, so this is the first time they're hearing them. They will only have 1 minute to answer. We're going to start with the most popular topic was around housing. And so the particular question that we have here with respect to housing is, housing in Canmore is among the most expensive in the country. What specific policies would you support to help address the cost of housing? Please specifically address development levies for new growth and taxes in your answer. And we're going to start with William.
60 seconds quick. Well, we've discussed already about trying to reduce red tape and making sure that municipalities' fees on whatever it is, the various levels of development costs are going to be reduced. So the federal government, from the conservative side, would try to incentivize to get the municipalities to reduce those as much as possible. Infrastructure is going to be part of that to help from the federal side to make sure that the developments, and I know Canmore is going to have some issues with where do you put the next ones. But a good portion of that is going to be how we actually attain the ability to build the houses. And we've talked about having better trades numbers to be actually have people to build them, and the cost of the construction materials as well.
Thank you. Thank you. 1 minute.
All right, William, still my answer. No, I mean, we do have to worry about what the actual building costs are, right? Like, developers have to think about not only just the permits. So, I mean, if we can lower the cost on permits or make it easier and get through a lot of this red tape so that a project is started in 6 months instead of 2 years. I mean, that does effectively bring down the cost of labor, of getting the house at least started, and getting it off the ground. But, you know, we do have probably limited space in this community, so again, I think we have to take a little bit of responsibility in our community to decide what exactly we want the future of our community to look like here.
Thank you. Mike?
The Mark County government has already committed to investing in technologies around home construction, specifically looking at the modular industry and how that can reduce costs and improve efficiency. On the taxes side of things, they have committed to removing the GST on houses under $1 million. Levies, of course, are the money that municipalities collect in order to build the infrastructure and maintain the infrastructure that the community as a whole relies on. So if we're going to say that we're going to reduce the levies on industry, then we actually have to make up that shortfall from something else, because that infrastructure does not maintain itself. The federal government has committed, county government has committed to providing direct support to municipalities to build out the infrastructure that will be required to meet the ambitious target of new home starts. Thank you.
I feel like I did answer this question with addressing the livability tax program that we have here in Canmore, and how to incentivize builders away from building luxury homes to non-market homes. What we need to focus on is, from the federal level, how do we support different governance models around building non-market homes? So is it cooperative housing? Is it having a national home builder to build the non-market and affordable homes?
Thank you. Okay, our next most popular category is climate change. For this one, we're going to start with Vicki. And the question is, wildfires are many communities' worst nightmare, and certainly the greatest identified natural disaster risk in Canada. What supports and policies would you encourage to help protect the Bow Valley from the threat of wildfire. Vicki, 1 minute.
So like I said before, I do think we have to put a lot more effort into the mitigation to make sure that houses, businesses, and people are safe, first and foremost. We have to make sure that, you know, our equipment's standardized. Part of the problem that happened in Jasper is they had different valves or something than the rest of the other fire departments, so they weren't able to, they had to actually bring water in instead of using the fire hydrants they had. So there's a lot of things that we have to do to ensure that people are safe, but I mean, honestly, we have trees around here, they absorb CO2 every single day, and I do not believe that Canada is a threat to the global GHG problem.
Mike?
So at a high level, we have to start by looking at reducing our reliance on hydrocarbon as the primary driving cause of climate change and these types of climate disasters. At the more local level, we have to invest and provide more funds available for fire smart programs, for fuel reduction programs, and for building resiliency programs, all of which are currently within the Liberal Party platform. And then finally, we actually have to look at the disaster response side of things. So ensure that there are actually well-funded and well-executed on disaster recovery programs to ensure that when we experience disasters, because they will occur, that the resources are there to allow communities to recover, and that recovery is community-led.
For wildfires, our short-term solutions, I feel like our municipalities are doing a great job at educating us, at coming up with evacuation plans, having town halls to help us work through these things. In this very large riding of Yellowhead, we have had wildfires in Edson, Hinton, and Jasper. And one thing that has come up a lot is looking at your home insurance. So what I've heard from a lot of people from Jasper is look at your home insurance. And then I started to think maybe we should be looking at a national insurance policy for mitigating the increase in frequency that we're seeing climate disasters happen.
Over the last few months, I've been to multiple different presentations and events where they've talked about what we can do specifically to do with Bow Valley fire smart issues. I was in the one in Banff where they talked about what they were doing and where the process is going. There was also the one in Canmore where they talked about with Steve Dolan talking about different technologies and how they can deal with thinning in different places and how it would be best to do that. And I think there is a role from the federal government to be looking at how they deal with these. I know the Fire Smart program I think is mostly funded provincially, but that's could be extended on the federal side. So that would probably specifically deal with the Bow Valley.
Great, thank you very much. Our next most popular topic is affordability. And I know we've touched on this a little bit through the first question, but I would like to dig a little deeper. So the question is, what policies, and we're going to start with Mike, by the way, what policies of your platform will see real and significant benefit to the average person to address affordability issues?
So first of all, for people to be affordable or have affordability, they need good jobs and a healthy economy, and that requires investment, as we've talked about. And the Carney government, of course, is leading the way on talking about uniting us and focusing on investing in the infrastructure that we need. They've also committed to a tax cut for the middle classes in order to ensure that dollars that within that socioeconomic range, every dollar that a person has in that area generally tends to recirculate in the economy. Most importantly, from my side, what we need is actual tax reform and a truly progressive tax policy. The effective tax rate in this country for corporations is 15%. The statutory tax rate is actually 27%. That is money that is not being used to fund essential services, and that is money that is being collected through excess profit. So we need to look at an excess profit tax, and we need a truly progressive tax system. Thank you.
for affordability is looking at grocery prices. As you all know, I'm involved in food, and the NDP has been talking about putting grocery caps or grocery price caps. In terms of long-term affordability issues, I've been hearing across this riding that municipalities require infrastructure. We're at an age in our country where we are seeing infrastructure starting to fall apart. So in order to generate our economies, we can start helping build and fund infrastructure projects at a local level. Also the one place that the NDP has been working on is looking at corporate taxes. As Michael said, it's actually an NDP platform that has been looking at how do we tax corporations more than the individual.
Thanks for the question. Affordability, we've gone over a lot of different things, but there's a few things that both the Conservatives and Liberals have come out with. First, Pierre came out with his 15% tax cut, and then the Liberals followed up with a slightly lower amount. We also came up with no GST on new housing. Actually, it got changed to all housing up to 1.3 million. We didn't actually have it on previously used ones anyway. But then there's also, we had another ability of no GST on Canadian made vehicles when we were going to have our issues with the US with vehicles. So that was something that should be helpful on the individuals buying new Canadian products. We've had a lot of rapid fire on these ones, but there's a lot more to come. I'm sure that if you look at the policies, that you'll see a lot more of them online.
Good.
Again, I'll just kind of repeat myself a little bit, but we really need to downsize our spending at the federal level. We have to, I think we have to do it at every level of government, at least be spending responsibility and proving that we're having a return on our investment in some sort of way. PPC wants to reduce the Bank of Canada target inflation from 2% to 0%. We need to actually stop printing money. I mean, we cannot, every dollar that we print is either a new tax or inflation for our children in the future. So we have to get back to a place where we have balanced budgets, and that will create long-term affordability for everyone. And again, getting rid of the carbon tax, getting rid of a lot of these, lowering personal income tax, things like that. Like, that will be long-term planning, and yeah, it's going to take some time, and we're probably going to have to sacrifice a bit, but that's where we're at.
Thank you. And now our next most popular topic is international trade policy. So the question is, and Avni will start, why would your party and your leader be best able to contend with the current U.S. administration and trade tariffs?
Hey, that's a big question. So this, elbows up, this is not a single party issue. I feel that this is an opportunity for Canadians to come together and work on solutions together. So when the trade war first started, I believe it was Trudeau that brought together people from all different parties to the table. So I want to be one of those people when the next trade war happens. And this is how I think that we should be dealing with these kinds of things. And I'll also just give perspective on the trade war. I see COVID was a shock to our system. We're seeing all the increase in climate disasters. They're all shocks to our system. And this trade war is another shock to our system. And the only way to be able to manage these shocks that we're going to continue to have is to be work together.
Absolutely. So why would your party and your leader be best able to contend with the current USA administration
and trade tariffs?
Well, to start with, Mr. Polyev doesn't have anything that is going to be compromising his situation with regards to connections with China. He doesn't have anything that's going to be connected. He's already said that he's, our president to the south has said that he likes Mr. Carney better. So to start with that is not necessarily a good thing for us. So we think that the Conservatives are going to have a better situation where they're going to actually be able to deal with on a level playing field instead of being buddies and being sold out to the U.S. Liberals.
Vicky?
I believe this has been a wake-up call for Canada. I think we have gone down in productivity year after year after year for many, many years. We have to start becoming the producers again of our own things. Like we ship a lot of raw products, and then someone else refines it or creates a product out of our raw materials, and we buy it back at inflated prices, and that's just the way it's been. And we've become less and less productive outside of our agriculture and outside of our oil and gas. We have not been as productive as we should be, and I think this is a wake-up call for Canada to get off its butt, create a market that businesses can thrive, and start being the producers and entrepreneurs that we've always been.
So first of all, it starts by not electing a leader that is mimicking the same language that the US government is using in their policy. And the words of Daniel Smith is very much aligned with the direction that the US administration is going. So that's the starting point. And then the question is, why this party and why this leadership? It comes to experience. Mark Carney, in the work that he has done, has a demonstrated experience in high stakes and high pressure roles and dealing with difficult negotiations. Again, this is a job, and you want somebody who actually knows how to do the job and has the experience to be able to deliver in high stakes situations.
This next question will start with William, and the topic is intergovernmental relations. Question: it's no secret that tensions between Alberta and Ottawa are at a boiling point. Yet, it is critical for all levels of government to work together for the betterment of Canadians. How would you advise your party to approach this current relationship?
Well, to start with, I don't think that there's a whole lot of argument that the Alberta government has been in favor of the Conservative Party, and they would probably have a better working relationship together. Now, that being said, we've got a lot of provinces that they do need to work together throughout the country to get things done. One of the Conservatives' policies is to be getting the provinces to sit down together and actually work together for a variety of issues. One of them was getting an energy corridor to go from the west to the east. That would unify our country a lot more than some of the policies we've had in the past. Getting our products out to market will actually help the entire country, and the production and the oil industry can actually benefit a lot of the other provinces, a lot of the service ones.
Well, I think if you've been in Alberta your whole life, you know that these tensions are not new. I was the leader of the Independence Party of Alberta for about a year, so I do believe that Alberta does need to start standing its ground. I do not believe that Alberta has had a fair deal in this confederation for a very long time, and I do believe that there needs to be changes to our constitution. The PPC does support reducing in half the equalization payment and making it more fair and making it more affordable for Albertans, that we're not stuck having to, when we're going through hard times, not getting the help that we deserve, and also having to support other provinces that aren't doing as well as us. So, yeah.
So I agree with William's statement. It starts with bringing everyone to the table and having meaningful conversations and engaging in good faith, trying to understand where the real legitimate concerns and grievances are, and developing policy to address those. At the same time, it's also about talking about what we have in common, our values, and not what divides us. But then there also is the point where we have to be willing to use the tools that are available to us. There are regulatory and legislative tools that the federal government can use that there has been a reluctance to use over the last number of years, going back not just to Liberal governments, but Conservative governments as well. And if you're in a difficult negotiation, if there is not a sense that there can be a consequence of that failed negotiation, your likelihood of success is less.
So I feel like this is more like a human interaction and psychology question. As I've been door knocking for over 7 months, I have experienced that I feel like federal politics incites a lot of emotion in humans. And it's been fascinating to be on the receiving end of that. And how do we work together to not incite what Michael said, that divisiveness? Because I've seen it at the door where I've gotten yelled at, sworn at, signs defaced, because from what I have seen, some talking points from the Conservative Party, and that these people, constituents are projecting onto us as candidates. And it's been a fascinating experience in human psychology. And so the question about how to work with parties is, I think we need to start listening to each other, because that's something that we're not doing.
Thank you. Now there's going to be one more question in this segment before we move to the closing segment. Vicky will be the first to answer this question. This is around strengthening democracy. It's, I want to have a little bit of a preamble here. You know, one of the beautiful things about municipal politics is that, for the most part, parties and partisanship is not part of our decision making. And I've seen every single one of my members of council change the direction of a conversation by bringing up a suggestion, and the others going, you know what? That's a good idea. When we get to the other levels of government and the partisanship, we see majority governments elected with 40% of the popular vote. And it tends to be attack along party lines. So in this question, I'm going to ask you to really stretch out of the box. What policy put forward by another party is something you wish your party would put forward?
That's a really good question. You know, I think one of the policies, I can't even remember if it was the Liberal Party or the NDP, I'm sorry. But one of them was talking about something about when we were talking about the inter-provincial trade barriers and putting something in place to kind of make sure that those things can't exist. I think that's a really important policy that I agree with.
Thank you.
Not where I thought you were going with that question, Sean. And 1 minute is too short to answer such complex things. So I will look to our partners in government the last few years, the NDP, the work that they did in collaboration with the Liberals to bring forward meaningful action on pharmacare and dental care are examples of what happens when mutually aligned perspectives can come together and advance good policy. On a going forward basis, that I believe much of the progressive NDP platform around investing in social services is something that the Liberals need to adopt and continue to invest in.
So that was my line, because it's all about social services. But I would say, in terms of this campaign and what I've heard from the Carney government, is a national making Canada, the government, a national home builder. That is something that I could get behind in this election cycle.
Going back to saying it's about the policy for political process, I'd probably say something about the PPC not having a whip and actually have each individual MP not have to follow party lines and to be able to represent 100% of your constituency's issues and not actually follow whatever the party line is on certain things. Can't think of a specific issue at the moment, but that is a general policy.
Great, thank you. And thank you to each of you for stretching and reaching into the others, because I would love to see more of something coming from whoever is in opposition, bringing something up, and the government, whoever the government is, saying, that's a good idea. All right, so we're going to be moving now towards our closing statements. And we're going to go in the opposite order of the opening statements. So we're going to start at this end of the table. And the closing statements are up to 2 minutes. All right, and so once again, yellow 30 seconds left, red is time is up. And so, once again, with closing statements, we have William Stevenson of the Conservative Party of Canada.
Thank you everybody for coming out again. This has been I think number 9, and we've had quite a different topics in this area. We've had some of the other areas have different ones we never brought up. We never brought up our military. We never brought up how we're going to support seniors. We didn't bring up anything about crime. So there's a lot of topics that are still out there. So I invite you to come and talk to us afterwards. Myself, when I ran at the beginning, I looked at the Parliament makeup, and there was only 2 accountants in all of the Parliament. And I thought the government actually needs a little more accountability, and an accountant with 26 years experience would actually do well to help A, reform their tax system, but B, also look at what's going to be affordable for your individual taxes, as well as how new legislation is actually going to affect you and your pocketbook. So I'll ask you, please consider voting for William Stevenson up on whether you can get out and vote today in the advance votes or whether it's on April 28th. Please get out and vote. That's the most important part, but I hope you cast your ballot for William Stevenson. Thank you.
We have Avni Soma from the New Democratic Party.
So I'm going to finish off with my intro that I didn't get to. From my policy perspective and grassroots work, I saw the need for change at a political level. So this is why I decided to run. And I've been campaigning for over 7 months in this very large and very diverse riding. I've been knocking on doors, building relationships, sharing meals, and listening deeply. Fun fact, I have not had to stay in a hotel in the last 7 months as I've been traveling around this riding because I've had built relationships in every single town. And I also raised all my own money, so all the signs you see, we were first out of the block, we raised all that money. And I started, and the one unifying issue that we actually didn't bring up that much here, which is quite an issue in Hinton, Edson, and Rocky Mountain House, is healthcare. And that their emergency rooms are closing. They have to have times where the emergency room is closed. And for me and for the NDP, if we don't have healthcare as a fundamental right, not a privilege, we don't have a functioning economy. We don't have people to work in our businesses. We don't even have our own businesses. I know for me as a person who chose to go into small business, I did that with the knowledge of knowing that I have